Occasionally when we're out shooting wildlife, we can run into some image problems. Now there are a couple of ways to fix it, but the catch is you may have to go into Photoshop. But don't worry about it. Let me show you how easy it is. Hi, I'm Terry Vanderheiden, and even professional photographers make mistakes. Since it came up for me, I figured that some of you might have had this same problem while you're out shooting your wildlife. So you're out shooting fast, and the moment's fleeting, and you're thinking you're getting some great shots. But afterwards, when you look close, you realize you had the wrong aperture set. And what I mean by that is your depth of field is all wrong for the scene. So let's head over to Lightroom Classic, and let me show you what I'm talking about. Now, if you're on my mailing list, you already have received a link to download the actual raw images that I'll be working on today. So you can follow along with me as we go through this video. Now, if you're not on the list, don't worry. You can always find the same images by using the download link in the video and description below. Now, if you'd like to get early access to the future sample images and be notified of my new videos when they go live, just head over to my website at imagelight.com and click subscribe. And then you can join the list that way. All right, let's get started with this. If you're wondering where I was the last couple of weeks, I was out for some surgery for my eyes. I was getting interocular lenses implanted into my eyes. The technology is amazing, right? And it always seems like I'm buying a lens one way or another. So I had these lenses put in. It was done by a company called East Bay Eye Centers here in the San Francisco Bay Area. And they did a fantastic job. And no, they're not sponsoring me to say this. I'm just so grateful to be able to see without my glasses. It's been many, many years since I was in high school when I got my glasses, and I've worn glasses full time ever since. And so having the ability to be able to see when I wake up in the morning, see my alarm clock, see colors the way they're supposed to look, and see the sharpness in the distance, it's just fantastic. I do have to still wear glasses for my close-up, so when I'm doing work on the computer, I still need these, and that's okay. Not a big deal, because now I can see a heck of a lot better, and I'm just very grateful to be able to see. And obviously, as photographers, it's very important to be able to see well, but I think anybody really appreciates their eye, especially if you're out of it. And for a couple of weeks there where one eye was working and one eye wasn't, it really made you realize how much you appreciate good vision. All right, let's get into today's lesson. We're inside Lightroom Classic. We got a couple of images up here. I was photographing some meerkats, and we look here and we can see, wow, we've got the mom looking straight at us just about. The junior's looking great, but he's out of focus. So my depth of field was too shallow with that long lens in order to get this. So on this shot, we can see that the junior is sharp, but the mom's not even looking at us, let alone she's out of focus. So that's the problem we're going to try to fix today, is fixing our depth of field that we didn't really shoot properly in the first place. Let's go and come into this first one here, and we're going to do a little bit of work. So let's go in the Develop module. First thing we're going to do is go to the Basic panel, and we'll do some adjustments. So the first thing we want to do is bring the exposure up just a little bit. And as we do that, our highlights start getting brighter. So what we'll do is we'll take our highlights back down. Good. So the effort here is to kind of eliminate some of the deep shadows that's happened since we're shooting this at kind of the wrong time of day. This was shot at probably 11 o'clock or so. So we're going to try to lift those shadows. So we do the exposure up and our highlights down. Then we bring our shadows up. That also brings up some of the depth inside there. You can see what we're talking about so far. There's before and there's after. And maybe we'll bring up the blacks just a little bit as well, and that'll help lighten up those shadows and even things out a little bit. So the next thing we're going to do is work on a little bit of saturation. So we can just saturate this way. Of course, everything gets saturated, the backgrounds and whatnot. I prefer sometimes to do this. I like to go into the color mixer and use point color. Grab this eyedropper, and I just want to click onto some of the reds, some of the red tones here, and the browns. And what we're going to do is we're going to just saturate those. So let's bring that up and saturate those. Now let's see what we've got so far. That's before and that's after. So we've done a little saturation and we've lightened up the shadows a lot underneath the chin. So the next thing we're going to do is going to go into our denoise. So let's come up here. We'll come up to 50% and we can see what we've got here. Got a little bit of noise built up over here. That's in part due to the fact that we're shooting it at 640. It's not bad, it's livable, but you know, let's fix a little bit of it if we can. So let's go ahead and hit denoise and let Lightroom do its thing. It'll cruise around here, take a few seconds to get that done. So now let's take a look at what we've done here. That's before and that's after. So we've done all the work on the one image, this one here. And so what we want to do is just transfer those same settings over here so they look identical. So we highlight this one by clicking on it, hold the shift key down, click on the second one, and now we've got them both selected. You can see that this one's a little brighter than this one, and that's because that's where our settings are going to come from. And we're going to attach those settings to this image. So let's go ahead and go to sync settings. We'll sync settings here. Now, when we do this, you got to make sure everything's checked, right? That you want to have checked. Just this is kind of the default. But up here under detail, denoise, raw details, super resolution, that wasn't checked. So let's click that to make sure that that also goes over. So our denoise goes over. And this will take a little bit more time because the AI is going to go in to this new image and make sure that the noise fits that. It's going to use the same levels of the noise removal, but it's going to actually go in and do it appropriate to that image. So let's go ahead and let it go. As always, if you're enjoying this kind of content, hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and ring that little bell icon so you'll be notified of my next video when it's released. I always read and respond to all the comments in the comment section, so feel free to leave a comment, a question, a suggestion, any kind of feedback. I'll get back to you. I'd love to hear from you. And remember, your ideas often inspire videos, so keep them coming. You can also reach out to me directly by using my email, terry@imagelight.com, and I'll be happy to answer your questions that way and put you on the mailing list so you'll be notified of future videos as well. Now that all our work is done in Lightroom, we're going to head over into Photoshop. So we're going to select both of these. They're both selected, but let's just make sure they're both selected. And we're going to right click and go into Edit In, and we'll edit in Adobe Photoshop 2025. So that'll bring up Photoshop, and we'll bring these two images in, and we'll do a little bit of work on them. You'll see, you know, a lot of people are intimidated by going to Photoshop, but the reality is it's just not that tough. Once you learn these simple methods, you're going to find that it's really not that tough. It's easy. So don't be afraid of Photoshop. Go ahead and get in there and get exactly what you're looking for. All right, so this will be our main image here, and this will be our little sub image, because what we're going to do is we're going to take this little fella and bring him over into this image. Now, it's not going to be perfect because we didn't have, you know, our cropping was different. I was shooting on a monopod. So when you're shooting on a monopod, you know, it's a little bit like handheld, right? It's going to be moving all over. This was shot with a 600mm lens, a little bit of a longer lens. So it's hard to keep it exactly dead straight. On a tripod, probably some different ways that we could have fixed this problem. But in this case, shooting handheld or on a monopod, this is how we're going to do it. So let's go up to the lasso tool. This is just a simple selection tool. We're on this image here where we've got the little guy looking at us. So let's go ahead and just make a really rough selection around him. Perfect. Now we're going to hit Command or Control J, and that puts that guy right up onto his own little layer. It copies it onto its own little layer. Now we're going to grab this and just drag it over into this image. And you just physically drag it over here and let it go, and you can see that it's placed it right here. All right, so we have this image here. We don't need this one anymore, so let's go ahead and get rid of it. And no, we don't need to save any changes to it. So we're on this image here. And now what we want to do is we want to position this little guy in the right spot. So we hit V for our move tool, and that gives us the ability to move things that are on a layer. And then we want to align it right up with the head of the one underneath. And the way we do that, you know, it's a little bit random when it's full, but what we'll do is we'll take the opacity down and we'll zoom up a little bit. And let's take a look again as to when we're moving. There we go. So see the eye highlights? We got an eye highlight here and here. So let's go ahead and line those up. So if we line the eye highlights up on an image, a lot of times that's going to do a pretty good job of getting you right in there. So let's move our opacity. We can kind of see how well we did. Now it's not bad, except the ear's off a little bit. So let's hit Command T, and we'll do just a little bit of a rotation there. And that's just gets us into the transform. If you bring your cursor outside of the box, it'll make a little double arrow, and that allows us to rotate. All right, so let's go ahead and we bring it back inside. We can go back to moving it, and let's get that lined up with his eye and his eye highlight. All right, that's pretty good. So we'll hit enter, and now we've got it laid over in the proper spot. See how great that looks? All right, so we have to do a little bit of fixing. Here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna zoom out a little bit. So we'll hold the Option key or the Alt key down while we've got our zoom key. Do a little clicking to get down a little bit smaller so we can see everything. We're going to put a little mask over this. So that's this icon right down here. We click on this, we make a mask. Now in this mask here, it's white. That's what defaults to white. And so we're going to take our paintbrush, and our paintbrush we're going to make sure is at 100%. And we're going to do a little painting to just paint away anything that we don't want, because we're going to paint in black. So we look down here, and yes, we're painting in black. And now we're painting with our paintbrush. So now look, see what happens? We're able to paint away any of this image that we don't want. So we just probably do a rough pass at first. And see how we've done. Now we want to get this as close and as exact as we can. So one of the things I like to do is when I'm working on a mask is I'll go ahead and turn off that bottom layer. So all we have is the mask that we're seeing. And we can see areas that we may not have missed, right? We might have missed. So we can see we got quite a few. This one here, we don't need this. We actually don't need any of his body. We're just going to move his head in, right? So let's go ahead and get that covered. And you make sure that you're erasing everything, even though we've got a soft brush here, because we want the transition to be soft. You don't want to have a situation where you're have any sharp edges. So you can see here that we kind of went in a little too far. So what we're going to do is switch this color back to white. And we do that by hitting the letter X. And now it's switched back. And we can just put that back in. There, pretty simple, right? So this is not rocket science. This is simple stuff. And if you get used to using it, you'll find that it's just a great way to go. So we can't do this kind of thing in Lightroom Classic yet. So this is the only program that, well, not the only, but it's the main program that's working in the Adobe system that works like this. So let's go ahead around his head, paint around here. And we'll come out here and we'll do a little painting in there. All right, let's take a look and see what we did. So that looks pretty good. Look what we've done. We've got the in focus mom and the in focus junior. We're sitting right there. Everything looks pretty good, but there is one thing that we need to fix. So what I like to do is make a combo layer. So the way to do that, shortcut is Shift, Option, Command on the Mac, and Shift, Alt, Control on the PC, and then we hit the letter E, and that makes a combo layer of everything that we've done so far. So now what I like to do is I like to look at this and say, okay, is there anything else that we want to fix on this? Well, there is one thing. And you can see here, see this green grass that's going through his face? This green grass is out of focus, completely out of focus, but you can still see the essence of green going by. So it puts a little green cast on him. So here's a simple way to fix that. We come over here, this fourth icon here, this little half white and black circle, we click on it and we say, let's go ahead and make a color balance layer. So this is our color balance. You can see we've got our details right here. So if we've got green in the picture that we want to remove, what's the color that we want to add? Well, the opposite of green, we can see it right here, is magenta. So let's go ahead and pull that over and put a little more magenta in. And then we'll do the same thing in the highlights. We'll add a little bit in the highlights, probably don't need as much. And we'll also do the same thing to the shadows. So we're going to be making a little bit of magenta onto the image to counteract that green. So we look at this, we say, wow, that looks great, except, Yeah, it did get rid of the green, but everything is all magenta. But that's the beauty of this, because it's a mask when they put it up there, right? When you click on one of these adjustment layers, it gives us a mask to work with. So we're just going to click on this mask and we're going to make this black. And we can do that the long way, which is edit, fill, and we'll just fill it with black. And there's a shortcut, which is Option Delete, you can use as well, or Alt Delete. So now it gave us a black mask. And now what we want to do is we want to just paint in white. So let's go ahead and change our color over to white. You can do that by clicking this here or hitting the letter X. So now we've got a white brush. It's soft. And now we're just going to paint right across here where we see that. There. That's almost perfect. So now we've added magenta into this area just to cover up where that green is, right? And it's almost perfect, but the way to make it perfect is to come over to opacity and slide that opacity back and get that till it just covers where his face is. Now you can see on the outline out here that it also has some magenta that we don't necessarily want. But remember, we're on this mask. So we can simply go in here and take our mask, go into black, and just click and get rid of anything that's fringy that we don't want that'll change that color. And we can just bring the opacity down just a little bit more. And now we've got it. So let me show you where we started with this thing. Let's zoom out just a little bit. And we'll hold the Option key down or the Alt key and click on the bottom last eyeball on your stack, and that turns them all off. So see what we've done? We've added the face, we've corrected a little bit. We can still see a little of that magenta, so I'm going to pull that back just a little bit, and we've got them both looking here. Now there is one thing that we got to do that we need to make sure is fixed. So let's come up here, and we're going to do another layer, and we'll do that combo layer again. Remember, Shift Option Command E or Shift Alt Control E, make us another combo layer. And now what we're going to do here is we're going to do a little bit of just simple adding a new highlight. So we come down here and we can see that this eye has a highlight, but this one doesn't. And highlights are one of the things that I think really bring the attention to an eye, right? So let's go ahead and grab our lasso tool again. And we'll just kind of select, real rough selection of that eye highlight. And then we're going to hit Command or Control J, pop that up onto its own layer, hit V, our move tool, and we're going to move that highlight over to this eye. Now it looks pretty good, but we also like to go in like we've done in the past and make a little layer mask around it just to make sure. So I like to turn off all these eyeballs going down, and then I just have this. I grab my brush. I want to paint. It's a soft brush because we want this transition to look good. And we can just leave it on black, and we're just going to soften this line around this eye highlight. And actually, the more you zoom up, the easier this is to work with. Using a tiny brush, we want to soften any transition so that way nobody really knows that we've added an eye highlight there. There we go. All right, so let's go ahead and turn these on. And that's with the highlight and without. Now when we pull back, we can see that now we've got the highlights on both the eyes. And now the last thing we need to do is just do a sharpening. So I'm going to make another combo layer. Shift Control. I use this a lot. I use a combo layer all the time. So that's Shift Option Command E, and it's Shift Control Alt E for the PC. Make this combo layer again. And now what I'm going to do is go in to, this is my preferred way of doing sharpening, and that's Topaz Sharpening AI. And we'll just go ahead and do a sharpen over the whole thing. You could bring that back into Lightroom and sharpen it there if you're used to sharpening there. But we're going to just take a look here, make sure we're in the right spot. Okay, we're at about 68%. We can probably pull that back just a little bit. All right, I like this sharpening better, so we'll hit apply, let it go through its thing. All right, so we've done all of our work. We're pretty happy with it, and we're just, now we're ready to go. So let's take this, and one of the things that I like to do before I save it, so we see here this is at 16-bit. We've done all the changes on the image already, so we don't necessarily need to save all of that color data. So we can come up here to Image, Mode, and bring it down to 8 bits. And what that does, you'll see the difference. Aha! You don't see the difference, do you? So the difference is that we don't see that, right? We actually end up having, it just looks fine, but what it's gonna do, it's gonna save a lot faster than at 16-bit. So if we're ready to, if we're done with this image, you can save it at 16-bit, and then you can always go back if you want to adjust colors and things like that, because it has more color depth. But 8-bit is actually pretty good for especially any kind of sharing. So let's go ahead and hit save. And it sends it back into Lightroom. Now we can see our new image that we finished with. And we just want to do one last thing that I like to do on images, is I like to put a little vignette around them. So we come in here, and we go to Effects, and we see our vignette, and we would just slide this a little bit back this way to add a little bit of vignette to the image. So this is a way that you're using Lightroom, but then you got to dip into Photoshop to do those layer masks, because it's so much more accurate than anything you can do in Lightroom. And Lightroom doesn't have layer masks at this point. So you can go in and just lay something over. It's a composite, right? We're compositing a couple of images. But what we wanted to do here is we wanted to make sure that we could get our image in, so it would look like it's in focus, right? So both the little guy and the mom are both in focus, because we didn't do that when we shot. So hopefully this is something that will help you. And don't be afraid of Photoshop. Just jump into it, do these simple things, follow along exactly what I did, so you'll have that success. And you'll know in the future when you want to do a simple composite of putting a face over another face, or fixing your depth of field if you made a mistake out in the field. It's a pretty simple way that you can go in using a little bit of Lightroom, a little bit of Photoshop, and you're on your way. All right, see you next time.